We are back in track 2 with a discussion session now with Virginie, who wanted to discuss which Odoo version and editions the OCA members use for their customers.
Yes, indeed.
So
yes, so it's just an opportunity to ask these questions. I know there are not a lot of people there. I think that Remy is there and is interested in this discussion as well. So maybe I could ask you a lot of questions, Stéphane, and you can attack soon.
Feel free.
And I'm sure it can be useful for some people looking at this later on as well. I think you use Odoo Community Edition as well as Odoo Enterprise, and that you are also an official partner of Odoo. Could you explain a little bit your choice?
Well, first of all, our choice is that our approach when addressing customer projects is always to first look at what can be done with the standard version of Odoo. And then for custom requirements, look at what can be found in the OCA. And if the customer requirements are generic enough and not covered by existing OCA module, contribute them ourselves. And finally, when the customer requirements are too specific or not well understood enough to be contributed as generic modules, we do custom development. And for us, it's very important to work in community as much as we can for many reasons. One of them is that it's fun, but for our customers, it's also better for them because they are then not alone to have to support the maintenance effort of their module, and that's very important for us. So yeah, because we have seen in the beginning many Odoo partners who simply could not survive because they were not capable of migrating all the modules they developed for their customers, and sharing that effort is an important aspect of working in community. Yeah. Now, regarding the Odoo versions we are using. We have a mix of both. We do have Odoo Enterprise customer, quite a lot of them actually, but even for those customers, we also use a lot of OCA modules. And in general, our reasoning is that when the customer requires heavy customization of enterprise module, we invariably look at OCA alternative. But for some customers, when enterprise module work out of the box, then if they are paying the subscription, why not use them? Some of them work well, and some customers appreciate to use them. So yeah. But when we combine the two, we also pay particular attention to license compatibility. So we make sure to not have, for instance, custom modules that depend both on enterprise and OCA AGPL modules, for instance. That's for instance important, and that's why actually I developed the Manifest 2 module, which has a license check command to verify that dependency tree of the modules you are installing is respecting the license constraint. Because if you don't check it in your CI, you make mistake. It's inevitable. And yeah. And so yeah, it's a mix, and then we have some customer who are pure community. We have a few of them also.
And so it's based on really the need of your customers, and depending on that, you will propose the Enterprise Edition or the Community Edition, and in both cases, you will be able to add some OCA modules?
Well, the needs, and well, that's not the only factor. I mean, there is a commercial aspect. There are some customers, especially large public sector customers or large enterprise customer, are reassured by having the editor subscription and support. And also when the customer can afford the enterprise subscription, I think it's also good to contribute to Odoo upstream in that way, because it contributes to the sustainability of Odoo, and that's important too when the customer can afford it. That's clear. Now, in terms of features, well, there are sometimes customers are attracted by specific enterprise features, but it's not very often the main factor for choosing between a pure community or enterprise version. It's much more depend of whether the subscription is affordable or not for the customer. Yeah. And there are situations, of course, where the per user subscription model of Odoo is not always applicable when you have very large customers with many users, but using light features. Sometimes the subscription model is not working, and it's always a very open discussion we have with the customers. Yes, definitely. So
Okay.
it's a mix.
Yeah, to share a little bit about our experience at CoPTZ, we work only on the Community Edition, for the moment at least, because we work with a lot of food co-op, for example, which are cooperative supermarkets, where they are building their own supermarkets, and people who can shop has to work in the supermarket. It's like an alternative to the food system. And in this case, all the members of the supermarket have to access Odoo to be able to manage the shift, the schedules, and a lot of things. And they have like thousands of members, so it would be really impossible to get the edition, the Enterprise Edition.
Yeah, that's clear.
There is also this question about the open source, because when you are working with the Enterprise Edition, the enterprise modules are not completely open source, or are not open source at least, if I understand correctly. So is it something that bother you or your employees, or because it's something that bothers us a lot? Yeah,
I mean, well, the good thing with the Odoo approach is that even for the enterprise modules, when you pay the subscription, you get access to the source code. And I think that's a good thing, at least because when there is a problem, you can debug it, and you are not fully dependent on the support service of the editor. So when there is an urgency, sometimes it's good to be able to look at how things works and not waiting for the support to reply. On the other hand, the fact that it's not open source, so you cannot redistribute, that's really limiting the contribution possibilities people have, or the collaboration possibilities people have on the enterprise source code. And that's why we don't see a collaborative ecosystem developing on enterprise modules, because you need to pay first to be able to play, and that's the strength of open source, of course. And that's also a reason we are saying that, and I'm basically telling my team that when there are heavy customization to make on enterprise modules, we try to not make them at all, and look at community alternative. Because then we'd be basically alone maintaining those customization, and that's something we try to avoid as much as we can. Yeah.
And about the version, so Odoo is releasing a new version each year in October. For us, in our really small company, it's impossible to follow this rhythm. And also because we are depending on open upgrade, which is taking some time. So how do you manage this migration process?
Well, it's hard for everyone, and the pace is too high. The changes are too big each time. That's a reality. And when you have large customers with many customization, it's impossible to follow. If only because retesting everything does not work. Large customers. I mean, if you have a public sector customer with hundreds of thousands of users, they cannot afford to retest every use case each year, or even every 2 or 3 years. So, yeah. So we do skip versions. Yeah, quite a lot.
Like, how many versions do you skip? Is there a rule? Or?
For big customers, migrating every 4 versions is something we find normal. Yes. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, for instance, at the moment we are migrating several customers who are on V10, now migrating to 14. And
how do you decide on which version you will migrate? You make only the +4 like this, or do you think, okay, the 15 is has just been released?
Yeah.
Would you consider migrating to this version already?
Well, yeah, like others, unlike others, we have no strong policy about that. It really depends about also on commercial factors. Sometimes, yeah, customers don't want to start new projects on a version that's already advertised as non-supported. So it's sometimes not easy to tell them, well, okay, 15 is out, but we'll work on 14 because larger community and so on. Sometimes it works. It depends. But it's true that for teams, it's also complicated to track many different versions, because at some point you simply don't remember what's working in one version and what not. And so, yeah, more and more we are considering to really skipping versions completely, because if only for the mental health of our teams.
Yes, and there is also the question about the funding of this migration process, because, for example, with our food co-ops, we had them migrated from 9 to 12, and we did like a mutualization. All the customers paid together to do the scripts and all the things, but it was quite, it was a cost. And some of them did not expect that to come so fast and to be that much. And they are asking to maybe pay a little bit each year to like fund, and not having to each 3 years, for example, have a big expense. So how do you do that?
We try to be very honest with the customers and say upfront that they need to anticipate maintenance costs, and we try to estimate those. And for that, Odoo is actually helping, because now on their App Store, they are displaying on the Odoo App Store the cost of maintenance of custom modules is displayed. And when you do the math, it's actually very expensive based on the number of lines of code and so on. And I'm curious, to be honest, it does not cost that much to do the migrations, but the message Odoo SA is passing there is that it's clear, and it's important, is that maintaining custom software costs money, and that's something, maintenance of software is something that needs to be anticipated. And That's a bit a problem with Odoo, is that it's very easy to develop on Odoo. Developing cleanly, maybe less, but still, it's very easy to do customizations very, very quickly, and then you quickly can fall in a trap where you do a lot of, or customers ask a ton of small customization without realizing how much it will cost to maintain over time. And that's something we as integrators, project managers need to tell our customers, that there is a real cost behind any software development, and that must be taken into account. But all in all, when you do it properly, I'm still very much convinced that the total cost of ownership of an Odoo project with customization is still less than any other ERP. That's for sure. So, but yeah, we need to anticipate maintenance. That's clear. And to be honest, I don't know if Odoo is actually selling their maintenance contract to anyone, because it's very expensive. But the message they are passing is totally valid. Is that it's expensive to maintain software, and that needs to be anticipated.
And do you have like a ratio to propose to your customers?
It's difficult to tell, but I think minimum making a provision of I don't know, 5% of the initial project per year for migrations. It's a minimum you need to provision. That means every 4 years you need to be ready to pay minimum 20% of the initial project to migrate. That's certainly not exaggerated. And I mean, it's reasonable for software maintenance. There is nothing exotic in that. So.
And for the moment, so version 15 has been released. Do you already have some customers on this version, or do you wait several months?
No, but I mean, it's also, it depends on our pipeline and existing customers and so on. So at this stage, we are focusing on 14. Yeah.
But I've heard some integrators telling that we don't go to the latest version. We wait at least 6 to 9 months before going on it, because there are bug fixes.
That's sure that except for people who are ready to cope with initial bugs and so on, it's always better to wait a little bit. But again, it depends on the customer. If you have a small shop with a few users who can cope with some difficulties, then that's no problem. But yeah. Anyone else wants to share something?
Yeah, there is actually Sylvain Le Gall can join us and share his experience with Le Graph.
Yes.
Yes. Cool.
I can share my screen. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi. I can share my screen. I prepared a little. Do you see it?
Yes, perfect.
Yes, you see the PowerPoint?
Indeed, yes.
Okay, thanks. Just prepared a little presentation of 4 pages regarding the current topic in Graph. So we are not integrator, we are just using and implementing Odoo in our company. We started to use Odoo when the name was OpenERP in version 5, and then we migrated in version 6.1 in 3 years after. We use a custom SQL script to do that, because we didn't know OpenERP project at the step. Then we migrated to OpenERP 7. And then we started to really develop a lot custom code and using a lot of OCA modules. And so we waited like 4 or 5 years before migrating to version 8. And then we migrated to version 12 2 years after. And the last cost of this migration was that number of hours, including developer cost, but also making a lot of formation of for end users. And the goal is to migrate to Odoo 16. If we see in a graphical point of view, we can see here at the top the last version proposed by Odoo, and in the red line, the last version supported by Odoo officially. And here is grep in yellow. And the objective is to be in the middle of the 2 lines. And something interesting to know the frequency to migrate is, I think, what Stefan said, the size of the base code, if it's a complex project or a very light project. And so I developed a little module, the name is module analysis, to analyze the number of modules installed of your instance. And it says it provides a number of modules, but also the number of Python, XML, and code also. And I separated the code, the installed code only, in 3 parts: Odoo Community Edition, OCA, and grep custom. And if we check the line of code, here is the result. So most of the code is the standard code with OCA code and 10% of custom code. That's all. I don't know if it can help in the current topic.
Yeah, that's great to see a specific example here for you.
Mm.
And yeah, but
and Sylvain, do you have a kind of ratio between the migration effort and initial?
Can you understand the question? What?
Do you have an idea of the ratio between the migration effort and the effort to create the project initially? It might be difficult since
no, I don't.
Since
really and there is no initial cost. There is a recurring cost also, because we are now 3 in the IT team, 1 for the support and 2 for developing Odoo and other things, Nextcloud. We are providing a lot of tools, open source tools, so it's quite difficult to know. But I think that the ratio you said, 20%, is quite good. I
think by seeing your numbers, it should be comparable. But for us, 20% is a minimum. We have in complex project with customization that really integrated with the Odoo core features. It can be more.
And in your cases, Stefan, can you provide some? Do you have some numbers regarding the size of the Odoo code base, the OCA code base, and the custom code base? Because I think it's very important in the migration. In a migration project, no?
Yes. I don't have such figure right here, but indeed, the difficult part is when you have custom code that is really going deep in customizing standard features. When you develop completely new apps, it's generally pretty easy to migrate because the framework is quite stable actually. But when you depend on warehouse or accounting features, when you have customized the invoice process, for instance, you are in for some pain.
Yes.
You reach 13, for instance, and And it's not always easy to decide between customizing existing features and developing a complete new app, because usually when things starts for the customers, things are easy. Customization often starts small, but then it can develop and become complex over time, and it's sometimes important to step back and say, aren't we going too far in customizing standard features?
Yes, I agree. On that topic, there is another thing. In Grap, in the beginning, we was using point of sale. In version 5 and 6, it was just a mess. It was just not working. And so we developed a lot of modules to make point of sale working. But in the end, when we migrated, we just removed all that modules. And so it was a big cost. And I think that the good strategy was to wait and to migrate early to avoid. And when a Odoo module is not mature, and it occurs when a new feature arrives. For example, point of sale in version 6 was really not working, or maybe e-commerce in version 8 was maybe a little proof of concept, and it's maybe not a good idea to use it in production, and maybe it's better to wait a more mature version. I think it was an error in Grap.
Thank you, Sylvain. We have also Rémi from Le Clermont who can share, as we have still like 2 or 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So at Le Clermont, we are a cooperative working on exclusively on a free open source project. So we are working only with the Odoo community. And I think I join what was said before, that we cannot afford to go into each version. It depends on the needs from the customer. Actually, we maintain. So we have been working since version 9, I guess, and we have now we have some customers in version 10, a lot in 12, and a few in 14. But I think we came too early on 14 because we started this summer, and a lot of things have moved on stock, on invoicing, and it introduced a few regressions, and also just keeping the code up to date. It's already difficult to retest every use case every time there is to follow every commit also on Odoo and so on. So I think we went a bit too early on this 14, but we are currently in the process of starting migrating our own database to 14, and a few customers also requested a few features that are available in 14, and instead of developing backporting a few things, we prefer to sell them the migration to 14, and that's usually how we work on this. And also, Sylvain, I think it's really interesting to make this ratio between what comes from Odoo code, what comes from OCA, and what's custom code. And it's always a bit difficult to say, but there is this simple module from OCA, we should use it, but it's not exactly what we want. So every time the developer prefer to say, no, let's redo the thing, and but then for migration, it's a nightmare. So, yeah, it's a trade-off to find between all of this, to have a proper process, and to get because also it's not only that the code is changing, it's often that also the screens and so on are changing, so you have to train again all the end users, and that for me is the most problematic part, because if it was like transparent for the user, we could introduce it more smoothly in the migration. But today you really need to have them to take time. It's not only a matter of money and of finance, but they also need to take time to be trained on the new things and the new process. And a lot of times, some things they were doing before, it's also the opportunity to discuss again whether it makes sense still, or because I evolved also in the meantime. And so it's really, for us, at least the migration is really like a new project for this customer, where we take over also what we've done and what is still necessary, what still needs to improve, what could be replaced by Odoo standard migration and so on.
Remy, I think we're done with the time, Stefan.
Yes, I think the next slot is at 35. But we'll be waiting for Daniel and Simone. So Simone is finishing in 5 minutes. So I think we'll jump here just afterwards.
Well, that's great to see that we're not alone in this mess. And that we can join our forces.
Yeah, but doing Odoo customization remains software engineering, and it's an art and a science. And sometimes there is a disconnect between the perception of customers who say that there are apps, so it must be as easy as a smartphone. And so there is some pedagogy to do.
Yeah,
that's sure.
Thank you for sharing, Stefan, Sylvain, Remy. It was nice for me, at least. We are not a lot of people, but I enjoyed it. So
yeah, so it was an interesting conversation. Yeah, thank you for organizing it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Bye.
Bye.